I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. Hey guys, I am back. Sorry for the delay. I've not been particularly well for a while, and other things, just been busy. But I am back. I was going to talk a lot about Stan Lee in this particular podcast, do a kind of eulogy, but because it's been delayed quite a bit, I think other people have said things much more eloquent than myself about the great man, but I was very sad to hear of his loss, and it affected me very deeply, and yes, I was very saddened, and it probably didn't help. It probably maybe even triggered the kind of illness that I had. So yeah, but I've not been doing too badly though. I've been trying to catch up with lots of geeky stuff. I watched a couple of films recently, comic book films I'd never seen. I watched Supergirl, 1984's Supergirl, with Helen Slater, Faye Dunaway, and Peter O'Toole, and that was pretty dreadful. Yeah, it was not good, not well written, not well conceived, not well anything. So yeah, it wasn't great. So the TV show, brilliant though. And I also watched Trial of the Incredible Hulk, which features the first live-action appearance of Daredevil, and the Kingpin, played by John Rhys Davies, is one of my favourite actors. And that wasn't too bad, actually. I expected that to be a lot worse than it was, but it was fairly grounded, and, you know, as much as grounded as I think about a giant green monster it can be. Anyway, I'm going to crack on with the first segment in this particular podcast, which is Secret Ball Stories. Secret Ball Stories. Alright then, so Secret Ball Stories was where I list usually a top 5 of, films, comics, whatever kind of good kind of topics there are, and we'll focus on a specific character perhaps, or franchise or genre or something like that. This week, I'm going to focus on Stan Lee written comic books, mostly his Marvel stuff. He has done original stuff with his company POW Entertainment, things like that, but I'm going to focus on his big, kind of, his great kind of crowning achievement kind of stories in the Marvel Universe, because I'm a make mine Marvel kind of guy. So let's rock on. So number 1 is The Origin of Doctor Doom, which is in Fantastic Four Volume 1, Annual 2 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So finally we get the origin behind one of the most dastardly and devastating villains in the Marvel Universe, possibly the greatest comic book villain of all time, and what probably Stan's favourite villain that he ever created. It's one of his earliest and one of his best as well. So in this story we basically find out how a small Eastern European boy becomes this iron despot who melds magic and science together for his evil means. It's a really great story. It's really fascinating to see how he began, and how origin stories are always really interesting for heroes and villains. I think Doctor Doom has one of the better origin stories. He starts off as this small, part of this small kind of travelling band in Latveria, which is not a real country, I found out in my youth, which I was very disappointed about. Same with Wakanda and Genosha and various other fictional countries, and more with the DC stuff. But yeah, it's a brilliant little tale, and you get to see why he hates Reed Richards, you get to see why he hates the world, why he thinks he should control it, why he wants to destroy everybody and rule everything. It's a great little story, and they haven't altered it. They haven't really changed his origin story. They've added layers to it. But it's never been like rebooted or there's other versions of it. There's the Ultimate Doctor Doom by Mark Millar, who had goat legs, which I don't think I or a lot of people cared for particularly. But yeah, no, it's true Kirby, brilliant artwork, true Stan. It gives Doom these kind of Shakespearean monologues, which are a joy to kind of read and to experience. And you get the famous scarring as well, and his the past about his mother being a witch and a sorceress. So some really good things that would carry on and be a huge part of Doctor Doom's story and his legacy. And not only that, you get 2 stories in this annual as well, which is really cool. You get basically his origin story, and then you also get where he was left off in the last battle he had with the Fantastic Four, and where he takes on from there. And he actually meets a possible future version of himself, or a kind of descendant of his, by the name of Ramatut, who was an earlier Fantastic Four villain, who would later go on to become Kang the Conqueror, who's another one of my favourite Marvel villains in the huge catalogue of great villains that Marvel has. So he bumps into them and he says, well, I'm going to destroy the Fantastic Four. I've got the best way to do it. And he kind of tricks them all into, I think he hypnotises them all into fighting each other until himself and Reed Richards have their final clash, their final battle, to prove who is the most intelligent and the more superior, who has the superior intellect. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. It's a great little story. Now, I do usually do a top 5, but I'm going to go for a top 10. Also, I forgot to mention at the start that Looper did a really good video on YouTube of the best Stan Lee stories. They did top 10 of Stan Lee stories. So these are stories that also are just as good, just not featured on that video. So yeah, go watch that, because it's a really well put together video on YouTube about Stan Lee's work, and yeah, highly recommend all the stories there. So I've chosen 10 different ones, 10 stories you wouldn't find on that video. So great, let's move on to the next story, which is To Wake the Mangog, in Thor Volume 1, issues 154 to 157 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Now, this is Thor at its most crazy, cosmic, and brilliant. Basically, it's the first Ragnarok story, the first time where Ragnarok is kind of invoked and what would happen and the end of the universe. Basically, what happens is one of Thor's villains, She-Hluk the rock troll, stumbles upon a cave and a huge door that Odin has decreed must never be opened, and being a dumb rock troll that he is, smashes the door and opens up this kind of cave, this cavern, and inside is the Mangog. Now, the Mangog is a creature who has the power of a billion beings, and the combined hatred has kept him alive for all these kind of eons that Odin has kept him trapped. And the reason he has so much hate for Odin and all this power is basically Odin committed genocide on a whole race of beings, a billion beings, which is pretty bad genocide, numbers-wise, as far as I'm aware. It's huge. And yeah, what they do is they combine all their hatred and their power together and compose it into this one being called the Mangog. And he kind of looks a bit like, I think there's a couple of beasts in the Thor movies that I think are inspired by the Mangog. I think they're on the Jotunheim planet, and the ice planet with the ice giants. And it basically is even the Asgardians have no chance against this thing, and you're wondering why Odin doesn't just wish him away and magic him away. Well, Odin's going through the Odin sleep, so there, and Thor's not even there, and Loki takes over because he goes, well, surely I'm a better fit for ruler for Asgard than anybody else. and he hides away this whole time and leaves Thor to get. He wants Thor to get killed and then to save the day because he wants the worship and admiration of all the Asgardians, which doesn't come to light. But it's a really great story. It's so epic. You've got the Warriors 3 are in there. Sith is in there. Basically, the Mangog cuts a swath through Asgard, just obliterates everything. Just a huge epic battle, and it goes on for several issues, and it's so much fun. And Kirby draws. Kirby has always been original. Jack Kirby is the quintessential comic book artist, and he always, no matter how many robots and monsters and creatures and demons and you name it, aliens, they're always, every single one, even if it's just a character that appears one issue, is totally, completely, utterly different than the last one. He has such imagination, and it really shows through in these panels, in these pages. And Stan's writing is just, it's this just utter brilliant storyline. So I highly recommend searching that one out. So that's To Wake the Mangog from Thor's kind of classic run. And for me, Thor has always worked when he goes cosmic, when he goes crazy, when he goes far out. When he's grounded on Earth, it's not as interesting. Depending on the story, depending on the situation, they can be. And yes, I do appreciate those stories as well. But I think for me, that's my favourite version of Thor. That's why the third movie, Thor Ragnarok, works so well. Because they went, right, forget Earth, let's go on this cosmic odyssey. And that is exactly why that film works. And all the humour as well. Okay, number 3 is A Blind Man Shall Lead Them in Fantastic Four Volume 1, 39 to 40 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So basically in the previous issue, there's a bit of a cliffhanger as the Fantastic Four are trapped on an island with a nuclear bomb, trapped by their arch rivals, the Frightful Four. And the bomb goes off. They get nuked. The Fantastic Four get nuked, kind of like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, but not as ridiculous. But Sue manages to bring up a force field at the last minute and saves them, and they're retrieved by a submarine nearby, a US submarine. And they wake up to find that they no longer have their superpowers, and they are kind of helpless if any villains, decide to attack. And who wakes up from his last battle with the Fantastic Four, that was earlier in the list, is Doctor Doom. And he basically breaks into the Baxter Building, the headquarters of the Fantastic Four, and uses the building and its weapons and all of Reed Richards' inventions against them, while they're trying to they've basically they've hired their trusty lawyer, Matt Murdock, to help them with. Basically, he has the he has what's the word for it? Power of attorney. So Reed basically tells him, if we die in battle, you have to, carry out all our, wants and wishes and wills and what have you. And they are trying to cover up the loss of their powers by, there's a robotic thing, there's a flame suit for Johnny, there's invisibility and force field projector for Sue, there's a stretchy suit for Reed, but these all get trashed in the first attack from Doctor Doom. And obviously, with Matt Murdock being on site, who better to help these handicapped heroes than Daredevil, who is the ultimate handicapped hero, the ultimate underdog for my money in the Marvel Universe. And he goes up against Doctor Doom, who is, power level is, crazy compared to Daredevil. Daredevil's a guy in a shiny red suit. So yeah, it's really cool, and they're totally outmatched. They're totally, that's what makes this story so exciting. There's a really great moment where Daredevil, he gets his billy club and he shoots a pellet at one of the inventions that Doctor Doom's using against the Fantastic Four. And it's got a crosshair. It's got like a target on the gun. The billy club turns into a gun. And I was just thinking, wow, that is he created that just so people wouldn't guess he's blind. Or either that or Stanley forgot that he was actually blind. Or Kirby drew it, so maybe he didn't create the character and he's not that familiar with it. So that could have been the could have been a good reason. But no, it's a really fun story, and there's a really heartbreaking moment right at the end. I won't spoil it, but let's just say one of the characters doesn't want to go back to being going back to being a member of the Fantastic Four and being superpowered. You can probably guess who. But anyway, another amazing issue. Check it out. Definitely just one of the best. Okay, next up, Captain America returns in Avengers Volume 1, Issue 4 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So it starts off not... So we know up until this point in comics, Captain America was big in the 40s, and then his popularity died out. They tried bringing it back in the 50s a little bit, but it also didn't work. So this time Stan Lee brought him back and said that he'd been frozen for all these years, and the body is found in the Arctic by Inuits, and they think it's some form of god or something. And the Submariner comes along and doesn't like the idea of this and throws the body into the water, and it starts to melt away. All the ice starts to melt away. And then, and luckily, right at the last minute, he's recovered before he drowns by the Avengers, who are, for some reason, in a submarine. Who knows? And they realise who this man is. And he wakes up, and it's revealed that during the closing days of World War II, himself and his partner Bucky, as we all know, as the Winter Soldier, are battling one of the villains, Baron Zemo, and they have to stop a plane. It's kind of a not unlike the ones in the first Captain America movie, kind of these suicide bomber planes, and basically it blows up. Captain America is hurled into the icy waters, and Bucky dies. Because Stan Lee wasn't a big believer in sidekicks, even though he made one of the best, invented one of the best comic books teenage sidekicks in Rick Jones. He wasn't up for. Again, Stan Lee used to smash tropes that were invented. He made teenagers were only sidekicks. Not in his world. Spider-Man was the hero. All these tropes and all these things he would change and throw out. And these characters have personality now, which they never had in those early days. They were just like, I'm Superman. I'm gooder than good. It's Stan Lee's ability to humanize these characters. Yeah, they have the power of gods, but they struggle to get a date, or break out in acne, can't pay the bills. They have relatable problems. There's a very early issue of the Fantastic Four where they're basically they can't pay their rent and they're booted out of the Baxter building. They go bankrupt. What a brilliant way to humanize these characters in such a unique way, which had never been done before, and that's why one of the reasons he was so great. But then, before Cap has had any chance, go back to the Avengers, before Cap has any chance to adjust to the loss of Bucky and the loss of his time and the loss of all the people that he's cared about back in the war, all the Avengers are turned to stone by an unknown assailant, and Captain America has to find out who this is with the help of Rick Jones, who Cap mistakes for Bucky in a really heartbreaking scene. He thinks Bucky's still alive, he's been resurrected, and he's like, no, I'm just Rick Jones, I look a lot like him. So yeah, really, really touching. Really, Stan Lee didn't create Captain America, but he certainly redefined it. With the help of one of the co-creators of Captain America, Jack Kirby. I think it was the best thing that's ever happened to the character for me. And he wouldn't be as popular now if he hadn't had this reboot, if you will, to the character and given him such gravitas and tragic backstory. So yeah, another great issue. Moving on to the very first appearance of the Black Panther in Fantastic Four Volume 1, issues 52 to 53 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So the Fantastic Four are invited to Wakanda, which the world knows very little about, much like the movie that came out earlier in the year. And the mysterious figure known as the Black Panther invites them on a big game hunt. Basically, they're going to be part of this huge, crazy hunt, and they realise slowly but surely how advanced and how crazy advanced Wakanda is in regards to the Western world, which is fairly advanced in the Marvel Universe, but Wakanda is something else entirely. And And then they realise that they are in fact the prey for the Black Panther, and the Black Panther is testing himself against the Fantastic Four because his the man who killed his father has come back to take Wakandan vibranium for his own and use it to his own evil schemes. Muhahaha. And that is Ulysses Claw, who in the comic version is quite a bit different from the movie version. I mean, he still has a claw, a robotic hand, but in these comics he actually becomes solidified sound. And I agree that they probably shouldn't have done that in the live action movies, because I struggle to believe somebody could be solidified sound somehow. I don't know. It's a little wacky, but the design for Claw is brilliant, and it's another amazing Jack Kirby. And this was a huge issue. Like, this was a huge turning point in comics at the time in regards to diversity, because there wasn't many black characters in comics that weren't stereotyped at the time, and the Black Panther was one of the first and biggest and most successful and most popular as well in regards to this. So Stan Lee also introduced many other characters like Gabe Jones in Sergeant Fury and the Howling Commandos, one of the first kind of supporting black character roles. Joe Robbie Robertson in Spider-Man as one of the editors-in-chief at the Daily Bugle, and the Falcon as well. Some great characters that were introduced, and he pushed for diversity, he pushed for all this stuff, and in a time where, during the not long after the civil rights movement, which is a huge issue, and he did a similar thing during the women's lib and brought in all these female creators to write new female driven and female led comics, which is a huge deal at the time, and it was great. He made such a huge influence in his time, but yeah, another great, fantastic comic. Now, moving on to the next one. Now, this one is the origin of Galactus. In Thor Volume 1, 160 to 162, and issues 167 to 169 by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So rightly, Thor is contacted by an alien he'd encountered before, one of the colonizers from Rigel. I want to say Rigel 7. And basically they're in trouble in their part of the universe, because Ego the Living Planet, who was one of the villains earlier on in the run, who's the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy, brilliant character, just an amazing, just conceived character. I love a giant planet with a beard. I think that's amazing, and he lives in this kind of whole kind of biosphere, this bioverse, which is in the Black Galaxy, I believe, in the Marvel comics. That's where he lives. And somebody's found him, the Devourer of Worlds, Galactus, and we have this epic cosmic battle that shakes the very pillars of the universe when these two clash, these two gods, and they're equally matched, very evenly matched in this battle, and it's such a great comic. And again, like I said, Thor is best when he goes all out cosmic, and this is one of my favourites. And the artwork and the writing, and then credit to Stan, because I think in these later the later he goes on his career, he, like many good comic book writers, they will let the art speak for itself. And sometimes there are some writers that will overwrite and fill panels with text after text after text. But when the artwork's so good, you just got to let it, speak for itself. And I think Stan realised that when working with Jack Kirby after so long, he kind of went, I don't have to do that much in regards to this. He still did the work, and he still conceived of everything. And these guys are co-creators. These. Why do you think Kirby and Stan Lee are covered in this list? So Stan Lee lifts, but Kirby has been there every step of the way. And Stan works with some other great creators who I'm going to get to very shortly. But Kirby bam, is I can't say enough good things about Jack Kirby. And please look up his artwork, look up anything, buy his work from DC, buy whatever you can of his, because it is fantastic, and all of his characters, all of his creations are truly original. Also, the later story is basically Thor has committed the worst thing in Asgard, and he's given in to the warrior's madness, which is kind of his, I don't know, like Wolverine's berserker rage, and he gets like 10 times stronger, but he totally loses it, and Odin has forbidden anyone to ever give in to the warrior's madness, so he's banished, and he has to learn the origins of Galactus, and Galactus, strangely, wants to tell his story. He's the only one, he's the only being in this universe. He comes from the previous universe, we would later find out in further stories, and he's lonely and he wants to talk to somebody, and Thor is just that person, and he relates his entire story, where he came from, who he is, what began, the huge change he went through, and again, truly cosmic, truly amazing, great little story there. Okay, out of the cosmic into the slightly more street level stuff. This story is Brother, Take My Hand from Daredevil, Volume 1, Issue 47, by Stan Lee and Gene Colan. So this is actually, this is said to be Stan's favourite story he ever wrote. So what happens is a black Vietnam vet by the name of Willie Lincoln is blinded while saving his troop from a grenade, and he's slowly going blind. But the one thing he's looking forward to is seeing Daredevil perform in a kind of USO show, kind of do all his gymnastics and stuff. And he finally, watching Daredevil, he finally, his body kind of gives in to the blindness, and he starts going crazy and starts throwing things about. They finally calm him down, and Daredevil visits him in the hospital and says, you can have a life. You can, it is possible to get past this. You will get past this. Kind of offers him hope. And months later returns home, because he was a police officer, so he returns home and he finds out that he can't get a job or any job for the police force because a gangster has implicated him in crimes, and he's being charged for them. And luckily, he goes to a I think Daredevil in Vietnam suggests that he go meet Matt Murdock, and he meets him, and he represents him, and he doesn't. And all this time, he didn't realize that Matt Murdock is blind. Matt doesn't reveal that to him, and he's so surprised that someone with such an impairment, with such a disability, can do so well. And it gives him hope for the future, and it's a really nice, touching story. There's all the Daredevil kind of gymnastics and crime fighting and gangster bashing that would come with the title, but it's a really touching story about hope and dealing with adversity, and dealing with the loss of something so crucial as sight. And yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful story. And Gene Colan's art is great, moody, and he's one of my favorite artists as well. I think it suits Daredevil, the book of Daredevil, and it suited Tomb of Dracula, which is one of my favorite horror Marvel comics they did as well, by Marv Wolfman. I highly recommend that. That's where Blade first appeared. But yeah, phenomenal. It's one issue. It's really short and sweet, but it's great storytelling. Next one, The Origin of the Silver Surfer. A lot of origins. I love a good origin story, and Stan Lee is one of the best. I mean, I don't think I'd heard the word origin story or origin until I read one of his origin stories. Where do we begin? And the Silver Surfer story is one of the most fascinating. And again, this is one of probably Stan Lee's favorite creation. Him and Jack Kirby created. But this is drawn by John Boshamer, another one of my favorite artists in comics, along with Sal Boshamer, who's another phenomenal artist from the early days of Marvel. So we find out that Silver Surfer is still trapped on Earth. He was banished. He was basically trapped here by Galactus after betraying Galactus. He can't get through the Great Barrier, as he calls it. He can't leave the planet, so he's stuck here, and he's so sick of the selfishness, the greed, the war, the violence that humanity just seems to keep doing to itself, and causing all these problems when humanity has so much potential, so much love, so much creativity, and it frustrates him and angers him, but there is a lot of beauty to the earth, and that's why he protected it when he did. But casting his mind back, we see that he was once on a peaceful planet known as Zenlar, which is a so technologically advanced world. It's a paradise. It's just everything that you could possibly want. Technologically advanced, everything is peaceful, everyone is at one with themselves, everyone is happy, everyone is joyous, apart from Norin Rad, who feels that the paradise is unearned. He hasn't strived for it. He hasn't earned what he's bored with the utopia he lives in, so he dreams of traveling the universe and seeing other cultures and worlds and alien planets. And his girlfriend Shalabal, the love of his life, just wants to be with him, and she wants him to just accept that everything is great and everything is good where they are. But unfortunately, Galactus has come to Zenlar and wants to devour the world itself. And the pacifist dreamer that Norinrad is, he decides to sacrifice himself. He offers himself as a herald to Galactus in order to save his own world, but he must leave it behind forever, and Shalabal, his love. And he adventures into the universe, but is now heralded as a bringer of death and destruction, where he was born on a planet of peace and prosperity. So quite a deep. There's always a lot of kind of. I always see the Silver Surfer as very much a Christ-like figure and a pacifist, and he struggles with his very being, and that's the wonderful thing that Stan did with so many of his characters. There's so much kind of self-loathing and just ennui, if you will, with so many of these characters, and the Silver Surfer is definitely one of his best creations. Next one is Spider-Man Unmasked. Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, issues 39 to 40, by Stan Lee and John Romita. So the Green Goblin he's been a pretty consistent thorn in Spider-Man's side. And this point in the history, he's trying to be he wants to be the kingpin, basically. He wants to run all the gangs in New York, run all the kind of mafia big bads, and he's trying to do that. And there's various different stories where he tries to do that, but in this story, he's sick to death of Spider-Man getting involved. So he turns his attention to Spider-Man for the first time, really. Spider-Man kind of turned up and has been there and has been a thorn, but he's never really gone after him or made it a personal vendetta until now. And he manages to get some thugs to hit Spider-Man with a weapon that disables his spider sense, or weakens his spider sense. So much so that the Green Goblin can stalk Spider-Man without him detecting, and he sees him unmasked, and he's shocked that Spider-Man is this teenager, this wimp, and not only that, he knows who Spider-Man is. Like he's met Peter Parker, and he couldn't believe it, and he reveals that he knows everything in front of Aunt May's house, and Peter just doesn't know what to do, and He's torn. Does he reveal he's risking revealing his identity by fighting the Green Goblin, yet, he has to protect Aunt May, who, he could attack anybody he loves, anybody now. This is pretty revolutionary at the time. There was not many villains who knew a superhero's secret identity. Very rare that this would happen, but it gives this added drama and this sense of dread, and you fear for Spider-Man's life, you fear for everybody, because the Green Goblin is so predictable, so unknowable, and so strange and bizarre. You don't know what his next move will be. And not only that, we learn the true identity of the Green Goblin. This was quite a prickly pear for the original co-creators, Spider-Man Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko didn't want the Green Goblin to be somebody that Spider-Man knew. He said he should just be like a stranger or some bizarre guy. And they kind of did that with another character called the Crime Master, where the big unmasking happens and he's just a general hood that nobody really knew. So I think Stan tried it out and he wanted to do something different. And as unfortunately that, Steve Ditko went and John Romita came in, who's another phenomenal artist, very different, but he put his own spin on Spider-Man, created some amazing characters as well, like the Kingpin, the Rhino. I'm kind of glad Stan went with his gut, because it makes for a better story, it makes for a more interesting read. But yeah, definitely one of my favourites. That's probably one of the first Stan Lee stories I ever read, and still blows me away to this day. Okay, we're almost there. Last one. Stan Lee Meets. So this was released in the kind of mid-2000s era of Marvel, and Stan Lee kind of comes back every now and again, what he did, to write certain stories, to write various kind of, little just short stories or various little things, but nothing too extensive, nothing like months and months and months of stories, but, when it'll just put in like a one-shot or something. So Stan Lee Meets is him using that character that he created, the Stan Lee character, if you will. Stanley Lieber created Stan Lee as it's a performance. He was always the showman, he was always that kind of guy. Funky Flashman was inspired by Stan Lee. It was a Jack Kirby character he made for DC, heavily inspired by Stan Lee. And so Stan puts himself in the books and he meets some of his best creations, including The Thing, the Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, I think Doctor Doom as well. I think that might be all of them, maybe more. But and he adds his own flavour of comedy to it, and it's great. The really funny little kind of these little short stories of Stan just meeting the Silver Surfer and questioning him what he's about, what he does. It's really, really funny, and and they really hit home. They still have that kind of Marvel bullpen style where he would, make jokes of the reader and, let people know what the bullpen was all about, and the people who worked there made these, these faces behind the comics real people to the readers, and that's the charm that Stan has, and he's great at throwing this kind of low-key shade at people. I watched a video recently where Rob Liefeld and Todd McFarlane, it's the early 90s, they're just creating this character and drawing it, and like, yeah, we're just going to create this character, and Stan Lee's just been like, why do they have to have rocket launchers all over themselves? They're pure 19. Like, maybe you should draw feet a little bit better and things like that, which is great. Now, all these stories that I've mentioned have been collected. They're all available on Marvel Unlimited, which is basically something I subscribe to, and it's basically the kind of the Netflix of comics. I highly recommend it if you're just going to kind of, I think it's like £7 a month, something like that, or I think £50 for the year. It's a great little service, and whenever I want to read a comic, it's great. I buy print, I buy digital, I buy it all. But I highly recommend it if you're trying to save some money and read some good comics. There's great stuff on there, and they upload new stuff every week, old stuff and new stuff. It is 6 months behind because obviously they want to sell physical copies and digital copies for monies. But yeah, they're all good, and most of these other ones, basically these stories I've found are part of some Marvel collections. These are called the Epic Collections, most of them. So Spider-Man No More, I'm just going to list them. I'm just going to list all of them and then pick the ones you want. So these are the Epic Collections. So Spider-Man No More, Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Black Panther Panther's Rage, Daredevil Brother Take My Hand, Fantastic Four The Master Plan of Doctor Doom, Fantastic Four The Coming of Galactus, and Marvel Platinum The Definitive Silver Surfer, and Stan Lee Meets. So yeah, those are my top 10 another top 10 Stan Lee stories that Looper didn't do. But yeah, I hope you guys reach out and buy those or experience those, because they are just great and I love them so much. I love the man himself. So, but enough with that. Moving on to our next segment.
It always starts with the little things.
And that phony laugh.
Okay, all right, maybe overdid it. Let me have it.
If love is blind,
Now I got you.
marriage is like having a stroke.
When I watch you eat, when I look at you lately, I just want to smash your face in.
Smash my face.
I want a divorce.
You can't have one.
Alright guys, so everyone voted on Facebook and Twitter, and I thank everyone for voting. The winner was War of the Roses, directed by Danny DeVito, starring Michael Douglas, Kathleen Turner, and Danny DeVito. And it's basically it was based on a book, I believe, and it's basically about a couple who they meet wonderfully and they fall in love, they get married, they have kids, and slowly but surely their marriage starts to erode and starts to go down a very dark path. And you know, it's an interesting one. I thought there'd be more, because I found it on basically a list of Christmas films. And I think the link to Christmas is that it was a release near Christmas. So I think it was quite the marketing strategy was that people argue at Christmas, people fall out at Christmas, families are difficult at Christmas, and I think that's what they were trying to do. And there was a few scenes featuring Christmas or around Christmas, nothing too heavily around that kind of part of the year. But yeah, slowly but surely the kind of marriage erodes and holes start to appear, and then they start getting torn further and further open, and you know, and it's it's a relatively long movie. It felt relatively long, not in a bad way. I'll be honest, guys, I didn't really dig this one as much as I wanted to. It's fair credit to Danny DeVito. You know, I think he's probably done better than this, and the talent involved, I think, does elevate the film. But I heard there was like an hour cut. There was like a whole hour of, and towards the end, there's it gets kind of ridiculous towards the end, quite over the top and slapsticky with the violence and stuff and the things that happen, the bitter, twisted anger and things that come out of Douglas and Kathleen Turner. And I think it's not. I don't know. I think I might have been watching one where the aspect ratio was a bit weird, or it was too much of a widescreen kind of look, and it was kind of cutting off the top of people's heads and things, which I found a bit irritating. But that might have just been the thing I was watching and the thing I was watching it on. But yeah, it starts off with Danny DeVito as this lawyer. He was the lawyer for the Roses. That's the couple in Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas play, and he's telling them about the story of this marriage to Dan Castellaneta, of all people. So his brother in The Simpsons. It was the Homer Simpson, and oh god, I can't remember. It's Merv or Marv or I'm kicking myself. Can't think of the character's name. Herb. That's it. Herb. Yeah, and yes. So that was quite a weird kind of cameo. It doesn't. Dan Castellaneta doesn't say a thing, because I imagine The Simpsons was out by then, and they probably didn't want to. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to recognise it. Or maybe it was just a bit before. Who knows? But yeah, he kind of depicts it. So it's quite nice to see him there. But he doesn't do anything. He just talks at him. And I don't think it's that well filmed. Like I love Danny DeVito. I love all the stuff he does. But there was nothing up until the end when all the kind of spoilers. All the kind of violence and stuff happens towards the end. All the kind of slapsticky, sinister stuff goes on. It didn't really have a particular style or anything original to it. Yeah, I don't think the editing was that hot either on it. Again, like I say, the performances do elevate it. So Michael Douglas plays this kind of he's this lawyer, and he becomes slightly more kind of distant and hardworking, and he's the one you relate to the least. I think you relate more to Kathleen Turner, because Kathleen Turner, basically her character goes, I don't love you anymore, I want a divorce, and Michael Douglas is like, you're not having it, you're not having a divorce, you're not having this, you're not, and it kind of he comes off like you kind of it's weird. Tonally, this film is not brilliant. It starts off this kind of, it's all lovey-dovey, and it builds, and there is a long time before the marriage starts to erode. I kind of wish there was a bit more to be to the beginning where there was holes already that were slowly opening throughout. But I think for the first hour or so, there's like no real 45 minutes. I think there's no real indication that the marriage is that bad, or there's really that many problems. There's a few issues here and there, but nothing really kind of juicy. And tonally, again, the film starts off, it's quite honest and brutally honest about the loss of kind of love in a marriage, and the breakdown of a marriage, and feelings and breakups, and I felt for the characters at those times. But then at the end, it goes. I thought, from the trailer, it seemed like there's going to be a lot more kind of crazy madcap, slapstick, action there was at the end, and I did enjoy that towards the end. But it took so long to get there. I was kind of like, and I think some of the jokes fall flat, and some of it's really kind of mean spirited as well. Like it wasn't an easy watch in some scenes. Sean Astin's in it as well. Actually, he plays the son. One of the. He still looks like a hobbit at 15, but he's fine in the role. He's not in it very long. But yeah, it didn't blow my socks off. I was hoping for something a little better. But again, like if it didn't have those actors in it, it would not be as good as I thought it was. But even then, I didn't think it was great. There's some great scenes, some great dialogue as well. But on the whole, it didn't come together. And I would actually be interested in seeing what that other hour was like, because there is towards the end where it does cut into when it goes to the kind of, again, the dark slapstick kind of violence and stuff. There is quite a dramatic. I feel like they're missing quite a lot of material. Kathleen Turner's outfit completely changes. But again, all the actors are fine in it. I just don't think it's a very well written movie. And again, I don't know if maybe those scenes would have helped, or that hour worth of. But I'm not sure if that would have helped, or if it was just they just shot too much stuff. But yeah, it's not great. It's not great. But I'll leave it there. I'll give it kind of 2.5 Spideys out of 5, probably. Yeah, not the best. But yeah, I'll leave it there. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But anyway, yes. So roll on next week. We'll see what I'm watching then. Please vote. It's either The Ginger Dead Man with Gary Busey or Jack Frost. Not the Michael Keaton one. It is the horrific. The horrific one with I think Shannon Doherty's in it. Not Doherty. Shannon Elizabeth is in it. Not many other actors that I know. But yeah, cast your votes, and I'll see which mutant freak I'll be watching on the way to Christmas. All right, guys. Let's move on to. Spider Dan.
And his amazing friend.
Alright, so the next segment is My Amazing Friends. So this is, again, the segment where I promote my friends' businesses or events. Again, if you have any events or if you run a shop, any private businesses or anything you're doing, or charitable events, anything at all you want me to promote on here, I will happily do that. So I'm going to promote my friend Dennis, who runs a comic shop in Oldham called the Comic Den, which is a great little shop, and he's a man after my own heart, really. Denny's a lovely guy. He's got a great family and works with my friend Mike Chandler, who's a big part of the Cosplay Companions Guild, which is a cosplay group I'm a part of, but don't really post about that much. But I've not really done much cosplay for the last year. Been too busy. But yeah, so Den is all about comics. He's all about the creators and people reading comics, which unfortunately nowadays doesn't really happen. He's definitely more for physical books. Definitely prefer. He's old school. He likes stuff in his hands. He likes to talk to the artists, talk about characters, talk about the worlds, talk about the business. He's a great guy, and his shop is great. It's a lovely little shop in Oldham, and it's got like most comic book shops. You imagine it's like this kind of dungy, dark. Kind of dungeon of geekness, some hairy, overweight guy telling you that all your opinions are wrong and that why should you read Supergirl, things like that. It's not the most welcoming. That's what I think the public consciousness think comic book shops are. Now this. It's run by his entire family, his daughter, his wife, everybody's in there, and they've got these huge, lovely windows, all the light comes in, and it's all there, it's well lit, it's got artists have drawn stuff on the walls, so every artist that visited did a little character head, or, a little portrait, and signed it as well, so that looks great. Great memorabilia there, statues and figures, you name it, posters all over the wall, and Dennis really enjoys the idea of artists and creators, and he invites them in as well. He brings them in, and they have so much fun there. And I got to meet various comic book artists. Tim Perkins, who's a lovely guy who did work on Transformers back in the 80s, and various other pieces of work since then. Worked for Marvel, and he's an absolute lovely guy. And I wouldn't have got to meet him and I talked to some various other artists as well. I'm drawing a blank at the moment, but they're lovely. And because of this, Dennis also he likes comic book conventions that are about comic books, just like me. There's so many comic book conventions I've been to. I won't name some in the area, but some will not even have one comic book shop in there. Will not have only one comic book dealer maybe, and that'll be a small dealer or a particular dealer. And I don't agree with that. It should be about the comic books, and it should be about these stories and these immortal characters. Yeah, we love the video games. Yeah, we love the movies. Yeah, we love the memorabilia and the collectibles. But really, for me, it's about where that comes from. And I meet various cosplayers, and I'm like, oh, you're Harley Quinn. Oh, that's brilliant. I love this story and this story. Have you read those? Because they're so good. And they went, and they won't even know the character's real name. Like, they won't have even done the bare minimum of a Wikipedia search. And I'm like, come on! Like, I understand that it's visual, and you like the visual, and you like the costume, and you dress up, but at least learn something about the character, even if it's just their name, And I'm not judging them on not knowing enough. I'm happy to tell people how to find out about these characters and how to enjoy them in different ways, and recommend stuff. But I won't judge them. It's just I don't want to make them look stupid, basically. Anyway, gone on a tangent again. So yeah, just if you're going to cosplay somebody, just do a Wikipedia search. The bare minimum, I think that's respectful. But if you don't know who you're talking about, it's like wearing a band T-shirt or a film T-shirt, not knowing what it's referencing. It's I think it's a bit silly. Anyway. So what he does is he's created the Oldham Comic Con, which is. There's no TV guests there. There's no movie guests there. It's purely comic books. So private creators and creators that have worked for various other people. Last year, or is it this year? Might be this year. They had the creators of Judge Dredd, so that's Carlos Escuera. I don't know how to pronounce that actually. And John Wagner were there, and there was a huge response. And it's free. It's absolutely free. This whole Comic-Con, there's Comic-Cons where you're paying 10, 15, 20 pounds. It's absolutely free. And Dennis will go out of his way to share things and to give stuff, because that's the old ways. You would go, oh, I'll trade you this for this. You read this, I'll read that. That's the old ways, and those are the days you miss. I don't really have, like, as a child, I never really had that because not many people were into comic books like me at the time. But that's really cool, and I like that. And even when I went to some other conventions, they give stuff for free, and they're like, yeah, this is the way it should have been. This is the way it should always be. but also, creators have got to make money. We were talking about Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster and Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson. They still have to make money. So I will always go out my way. And I went there with my nephew, and we dressed up. My nephew's, I think he was only about 8 months old, and I took him, and my sister lovingly painted him in green, and we went as Old Man Logan. I was Old Man Logan, and he was a Bruce Banner Jr. And it was a great day. Everyone's enjoying it. Everyone's having fun. It's a real family-friendly event, and a really family-friendly shop as well, which I think is very important. So he's very inclusive in what he does, and I respect him, and I respect everything he does. And I'm chained to myself. I've not been to the shop in a long time, so I'm gonna rectify that, I think, for Christmas. Maybe I'll just go and buy everyone a comic for Christmas. I'm sure they'll love that. But yeah, so I highly recommend. They're on Facebook, so they've got a Facebook page for Oldham Comic Con 3. And there's the Comic Den is also on Facebook. So if you're nearby and want to check it out, go do it.